My name is Phil Anderson. I live in Pocatello, retired from the Idaho National Laboratory about 18 years ago. I continued to jog quite a bit through my 60s and very early 70s. My knees started to hurt. I was referred to an orthopedic surgeon who took x-rays, examined it, and bone on bone was the terminology I heard, and that I could either have some injections that would alleviate the pain temporarily. There was replacement surgery, which is most common, and I know it is effective, even though the recovery process could be miserable. At my age, I wanted to avoid surgery, and my orthopedic surgeon did say, well, regenerative technology also is a possibility. So I did some searching on the internet, attended a couple of seminars on stem cells, and even though I was largely skeptical, especially since my medical insurance coverage absolutely wouldn't touch it, but after meeting with Dr. Wurick, I was confident enough that I thought I should try it. The injections were absolutely painless, and within a day, I have not since had any pain in my knees. Not just only a little bit, but gone. Now, 3 months later, I'm functioning essentially normal, and compared to where I was, I'm feeling so well that I really don't want to push it, take a chance. I just want to keep it this way, but I am entirely satisfied, pleasantly surprised, and no complaints whatsoever. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
My name's Glenn. Had my left shoulder was bothering me, had given me some fits while I was working and stuff, and so I came in here and Dr. Wyrick took care of me, gave me an injection, and took a couple weeks, and the pain is gone completely. It's awesome.
All right, so Benny, how long has it been?
Been 1 year.
1 year. How's the shoulder doing now?
Great.
Hey?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I am happy.
So, if you're happy, then why are you back?
For a booster,
Okay.
which I didn't know. You just recently started offering yourself, so I thought, well, the first one the stem cell went so well, why not go a booster?
Right.
And then kind of put it half of it in the other shoulder because it was doing a lot of the work while the other one was recuperating from the stem cell.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it's been a year.
It's been a year.
How much work did you miss?
None.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Benny. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, hey, welcome everyone. This is a re-recording of the webinar that I blew last night by messing up the sound and the video. So if you'll accept my apologies, we will give you the webinar anyway. This is the information that we would have covered, and I'm happy to share it with you, and I want to welcome you. My name is Dr. Brady Wyrick. I love doing these webinars because I love giving you the information that you need, and I understand that this is probably not the first time that you've sat through some sort of webinar or seminar when it comes to seeking out alternatives to drugs or to surgery. And if you failed at this in the past, if you've seen other information, you've tried other things and they didn't work out for you, it's okay. I want you to know it's not your fault. A lot of times it's just there's bad information out there, there's misinformation, there's good information that's misunderstood, etc. There's just a lot of stuff out there when it comes to regenerative medicine and stem cell therapy. So we want to help you kind of wade through that information so that we know where it's coming from. And if you really look at it, what's happening is that misinformation is getting out there for a reason. And one big part of that reason is the information is, well, what I'm going to share with you tonight is direct competition for pharmaceutical companies, for drug companies, for surgical companies, etc. Because what's happening is these people that are needing these joint replacements are getting stem cell therapy, and they're putting it off indefinitely and sometimes forever. And I'm going to share with you some of those cases where that's actually happened. So while the FDA has cleared the use of stem cells for things like osteoarthritic joints, they haven't approved stem cell therapy, and for that reason, Medicare, insurance, etc., they're not going to cover what we talk about in this video but we will go over costs with you. So everything's going to be shared with you, but I just want you to know we're here to give you the best information we know about. I'm going to share some of the studies with you, and we want to help engage you to start looking into some of the alternatives that are out there and that are available to you. So that being said, here's my goal for this particular webinar. Number one is I want to educate those that are wanting to learn more. There's two types of people that watch these things. Number one, there are the people that are just want information. I'm here to give you that information. It's all going to be laid out for you. So awesome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Number two is there are people who are ready to move forward, who want to take action, who want to start having a better quality of life. I'm here to give you the information, but at the very end of this, for you people that are ready to move forward, I am going to give you a special offer. So there will be an offer at the end, or actually in this video, the offer is actually below in that book your consultation now button, where we can sit down together and discuss your case. But at the end of this, we're going to go over we're going to go over an offer that we've set up for you. You're not going to want to miss that part because I think it's extremely valuable. But I want to lay the information out for you ahead of time. So that being said, here's my background. I've spent the last 13 years, I've been in practice here in Southeast Idaho. I've spent most of that time in the field of functional neurology and functional medicine. What that means is I am a licensed chiropractor. I have a board certification in chiropractic neurology, and we spent the first more than a decade helping people with chronic diseases, nerve problems, etc., by helping them change their diet, change their lifestyles. And when regenerative medicine came around and was made available, and I found a way that we could actually make this work, after seeing some of the research that I'm going to share with you today, I couldn't go back to what I was doing. And so about 18 months ago, we made the full leap into regenerative medicine, and where that's all we've done for the last year and a half. And I can tell you, our medical staff, I'm not the one who actually does the injections. My job is only education. That's it. I'm here to discuss your options, let you know what the alternatives are. If you like what I say, then we turn you over to our nurse practitioners. What they will do is they'll sit down with you and make their recommendations as well. But our medical staff, they've done over 250 of these injections. Making our little office here in Southeast Idaho, we've got the most experience when it comes to injections like we're going to talk about today. So we're happy to share with you what we've learned. We're happy to share with you the results that we've seen. And that's what we're going to go over in this webinar. And I'm just going to share with you just a little bit right now. So we've done over 250 of these injections. Our cases of osteoarthritic joints, when it's someone who's otherwise generally healthy, we're seeing a very, very high percentage rate. We're seeing results that are lasting over a year. There's research that suggests these last 5 to 7 years. There's other articles that suggest 10 to 15 years. So we're getting lasting results, and we're helping people to avoid having to have a joint replacement altogether. That is the perfect segue for the first person that I want to talk about, and this is where my epiphany came from. This is my dad. Hey, this is my dad. This is 1 year ago. My dad and I went on a fishing trip, and this was about 4 months. No, this is about 6 months after his injection. And for the first part of my career, I really banged my head against the wall with my dad because I had so many things that I wanted him to do and to help him live a better quality of life, but he was just unwilling to do them. But by the time we started regenerative medicine, both of his knees were bone on bone. Both of his knees were scheduled to be replaced, and he was not a happy camper. Now, Dad was one of the very few. He was one of the first patients that we injected. I was the first. My wife was the second. Her story, if you follow me, you'll hear her story. It's pretty awesome. But for my dad, he was the third. And he was one of the few people that actually got off the table feeling better. Most of our people will feel better within the first 6 to 8 weeks. We've changed a couple things, so we're starting to see more results the weekend of the injection. But for Dad, it was the moment he got off the table, they felt better, and they've continued to improve ever since then. Even with a meniscal tear that he experienced about 3 months after his injection, he was right back in the thick of things because the stem cells were still working when he got injured, and he's still doing great today. In fact, I just talked to him this weekend, and he was up in Sun Valley where he rode his bike 27 miles. And I'm not talking about an electric bike. I mean a legitimate bicycle, rode 27 miles, didn't have problems with his knees at all. So he's doing phenomenally well. Now, I know you're thinking, that's my dad, that's my family, that's all fine and good. What about real people? Well, let me tell you this. If you go over to my website, iamregen.com/testimonials, you will see these stories that I'm going to share with you. I've got just a couple. So dad was about his knees. This is Glenn. Glenn was his shoulder. I can't remember if it was left or right without looking, but Glenn was he's a service provider for a local, for the gas company. And his big thing, though, is that he's a crew chief on a Black Hawk helicopter. So he is in the Army National Guard. Excuse me, I can't spit that out. And he is a crew chief on a Black Hawk. So he loves to fly. So he's the guy sitting in the back seat. And if he doesn't pass his PT test, he cannot fly. So he did not want to have a He did not want to have a shoulder replacement surgery, but he wanted to find something that would allow him to pass his PT test because he loves to fly and he loves to rappel out of helicopters and he loves to shoot the machine guns that are in the helicopter. So we had to keep him. In good shape. So he came in, he did the injection, felt better within 2 weeks, passed his PT test. He's doing phenomenally well. And again, you can actually hear his video on my website, iamregen.com/testimonials. You can hear that from Glenn himself. This is Rudy. Rudy is also a shoulder patient. So Rudy owns a local business here in Idaho Falls. As you can see, Rudy takes very, very good care of himself, but his shoulder was wearing out and it did keep him from working out, from sleeping, etc. Within a couple weeks of Rudy's injection, he was doing phenomenally well, continues to do well to this point, to this day. And we're proud of Rudy. We're happy for him. He's sleeping again. He's working out again. And we're thrilled because this is a completely different quality of life for Rudy. Now, this is Anna. Anna's the last story before we start really getting into the details here. Anna is a case where she had fibromyalgia and she has psoriatic arthritis. And for the last 10 years, she's been suffering, looking for answers. She's done all the right things. She changed her diet. She was on the right path. It just wasn't quite enough. We gave Anna an infusion of these stem cells and stem cell exosomes, and she's doing very, very well. In fact, her husband, her husband had the best thing to say about the whole thing. He said that he was happy to have his wife back. So we're thrilled for Anna as well. You'll hear a little bit more about her story here in a short bit. So before we get into the 3 secrets about stem cell therapy, I want to answer that big question about what is a stem cell. So let's go back to the basics. Let's define what a stem cell is. Let's define what they do. And then we'll discuss what the 3 secrets are, and we'll go from there. So stem cells are what we call blank slate cells. And I got that definition from a patient of mine. I absolutely love it. Because if you think about a blank slate, what do they do? Hey, a blank slate is just that. It's a blank slate. So up here at the top of this chart, you see right here, mesenchymal stem cell. This is your blank slate cell. This is your body's natural reparative mechanism. So if you take this blank slate cell, and your body will release this blank slate cell in response to an injury, and it's going to go down and it's going to go to the site of the injury, and it's going to become what the body needs it to become. So if you get injured in the muscle, guess what that blank slate cell can become? It can become muscle. If you get injured in the cartilage, it can become the cartilage. If it gets injured in the tendon, it can become a tendon. If you get injured in the meniscus, it can become meniscus. You understand where I'm going with that? Bone, cartilage, muscle, marrow, tendon, ligament, adipose tissue, connective tissue, nerve tissue, everything, almost everything these stem cells can actually become. Again, it's your body's natural reparative mechanism. Now, what you're probably thinking is, well, if my body has this awesome ability to heal itself with this natural reparative mechanism, then why in the heck isn't it doing it? And this slide, I think, explains a lot. So over here on the left, when you're a newborn baby, hey, you have about 1 out of every 10,000 cells is an actual stem cell. So as you age, the number of stem cells that you have drastically drop off to the point that you hit the age of 80, only about 1 out of every 2 million cells that you have is a stem cell. So as you age, your number of stem cells that are available for use decrease, but not only does their number decreases, but the rate at which they replicate also decreases. So over here at birth, your cells are replicating about every 28 hours. You take your own stem cells at the age of 80, they're only going to replicate about every 65 hours. So there's a huge drop off in how many cells are available to us, and there's a huge drop off in how those cells can actually divide. And if you read the papers and you look in the papers, it talks about, in fact, on my website, imregen.com/resources, you'll find a paper that talks about the exciting possibilities with these young, vibrant stem cells that come from healthy moms, healthy babies, that we're able to safely use as transplants into other people, and it gives them much more therapeutic potential because of their division rate and because of what the research articles call their robustness, which I love that word, it cracks me up. So your own stem cells, and I jokingly say this, but when I say this, I'm not joking. The more gray hair you have, the less likely those stem cells are to be able to help you. So yes, you can use your own stem cells. That therapy's been around the longest. However, it's not as effective, and it's also more expensive. So stem cells, when you talk about what they do, again, number one, they're your body's own natural reparative mechanism. Number two, they are released in response to injury or stress. Number three, they have the ability to hone in on the site of the injury. Now, I show you this picture of this missile being shot off of an airplane because that is a guided missile. And think of it this way. That missile is fired when the pilots find a target, lock onto that target, and then that missile will chase that lock down to whatever that target is and destroy it. That missile has the ability to hone in on its target, just like these stem cells have the ability to hone in on their target. So they will go to the site of the injury and start repairing and restoring that tissue. This is how they do it. So number four, this is going to be very, very important. I suggest you write these down. Their biochemical action of these stem cells is, number one, to reduce inflammation. Number two is to modulate the immune system. And number three is to actually regenerate and regrow new tissue. Okay, so when you think about this in a case where we inject these into a knee or into a shoulder, they're going to start reducing the inflammation. That's why my dad got off the table feeling better. They calm the immune system down, and then they start regenerating and repairing new tissue. I'll show you what this looks like in an actual study here shortly. Okay, so that's what stem cells do. That's what they are. Now let's talk about the big secrets. Secret number one is that stem cell therapy does not come from dead babies. Media sources want you to believe this because when you get better, their advertisers, their supporters, they lose sales because this is direct competition. This is why I have doctors locally, doctors regionally that get upset and angry with me because it's competition. Okay? The safest, most effective stem cells out there come from donated umbilical cords. And these donated cords, that is tissue that 97% of the time in this country, that tissue gets discarded. So the 3% that gets donated, we can use it for therapeutic purposes. So secret number one is stem cells do not come from dead babies. Secret number two is that stem cells work the best with bone-on-bone joints. Even those cases that come in and say, my doctor says I need to have a replacement, you may be able to put off that replacement indefinitely like my dad did. Secret number three is that you don't have to be rich and famous to afford regenerative medicine. We found ways to make this affordable for just about anybody. We'll go through the costs and how the payment option works at the end. But just to be clear, we do have patients that fly private jets here into Idaho Falls to see us. So those are the three secrets that we're going to cover over the next few minutes. And so that's the direction that we're going. All right, so let's talk about this secret number one. Okay? Stem cell therapy does not come from dead babies. That notion, again, fueled by the media, that notion came from embryonic stem cell research in the early 2000s. Okay? Starting with George Bush Jr., there was this big debate on whether or not embryonic stem cells were moral. Now, here's where it comes from. Okay? Embryonic stem cells, if you think about the first 2 weeks after fertilization, you are considered an embryo. During those first 2 weeks, cells are dividing like crazy, and these embryonics, they are embryonic stem cells that can become any tissue inside of your body. Now, the embryonic stem cells that are used for research are not from terminated pregnancies. Am I clear about that? These embryos came from fertility clinics. So when mom and dad walk into a fertility clinic, they want to have a baby. What they will do is they will fertilize about a dozen of mom's eggs. They'll put 4 of them into mom, hoping one of them takes. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3. Okay? The other 8 of that dozen, the parents can decide what to do with them. Some will freeze them and store them for later. Some of them will give those embryos up for adoption, which I think is really freaking cool. Okay? And some of them will donate them to science. And when they're donated to science, they're used for things like research in immunizations. So when people get upset with me or take shots at me and talk about embryonic stem cells and dead babies, I laugh it off, because they're not used for therapy, they're used for research. And I guarantee you those people had a flu shot that year, and that flu shot had more embryos that were used as research for that flu shot than ever happened with stem cell therapy. So embryonic stem cells are not used for therapy, period. Now, some people think that aborted fetal tissue is. This would be fetal stem cells coming from the actual fetus itself, which is 8 weeks after conception. So that would come from a terminated pregnancy, but that is illegal. It's immoral, and frankly, it's dangerous, because those are the types of cells that can actually become cancerous cells and grow things in places you don't want them to grow. There are people that will leave this country to get fetal stem cells, and I don't know why they do it, but it does happen. It does not happen here in Idaho Falls, in the country, in any reputable clinic. It's not going to be aborted fetal tissue. First generation cells come from your own tissue. So we talk about first generation cells. Here's what I mean. The first generation stem cell therapy came from autologous stem cells. These were your own stem cells. So if you go back to what we talked about earlier, autologous stem cells, they drill into your bone marrow or into your fat. They take those cells and then they re-inject them back into you. But you are limited by your age and how many stem cells you have, and also how much stress you've been under, because that'll affect the effectiveness of those cells. Second generation cells, and I've already made this point, research is now showing us that your own stem cells are not effective due to age. Those research studies are on my website. Research is also showing us the most effective stem cells come from donated umbilical cords. Now, again, these donated cords have gone through a screening process, so we know that they're safe. We know that they're not going to spread some communicable disease. We also know that they don't transfer DNA. So you can use these cells, their availability makes them easy to use. Okay? But we call this second generation stem cell therapy. We call it second generation because we know that it was more effective than the first generation. And the third generation is getting into stem cells from umbilical cords, but not the cells themselves, but the chemical packets that they release from those stem cells called exosomes. That's the third generation of stem cell therapy, which we're going to talk about shortly. So secret number 1 is a wrap up. Stem cells do not come from dead babies. The embryonic stem cells, fetal stem cells are not used for therapy. They're not. There's all sorts of reasons why. But at the end of the day, the most effective stem cells available to us are actually coming from donated umbilical cords. They're the youngest source that we know that we can use safely, and they're the most effective, and that was secret number 1. So you're thinking, where are the studies? Here was a study that was done on mesenchymal stem cells for the treatment of osteoarthritis of the knee, and what they found was that there was an improved function and pain of knee joint without causing adverse effect, otherwise known as safety, and reduced cartilage defects, meaning shrinking the problem childs in the cartilage, and by regenerating a hyaline-like articular cartilage. So these are actually helping you to grow new tissue. So what does that look like in real life? Here's another story for you. This is Tom. Tom owns and operates Teton Pest Control here in Idaho Falls. And just as a side note, they're fantastic. Their service rocks. I've been really happy with their service. But Tom is 40 years old, and he's a business owner and an operator. So Tom works really hard. And being the business owner, he can't exactly take 6 to 8 weeks off to get a knee replacement like the doctors wanted him to, even at 40 years old. So Tom was kind of out of options. Well, it's been about 14 months now, and Tom's still doing phenomenally well. We're really happy for Tom. He's one of our poster children, but he's doing great. So if we went back and did a study about Tom's, it would look something like this: improved function, decreased pain, increased cartilage, etc. So that is Tom. That's what it looks like in real life. That takes us to stem cell therapy, secret number 2, and that is regenerative medicine works the best on bone joints, which is absolutely true. Even for those people that say, my doctor says that my knees are bone on bone, I have to have surgery, we see those cases on a day-to-day basis. Look, if you feel like surgery is right for you, if you feel like doing maybe even autologous stem cell therapy is right for you, that's awesome. Go for it. Let us know how it works out. I'm just sharing you what we've learned over the last year and a half. Now, we've seen case after case just like this one. This is a 54-year-old male that walked into one of my colleagues' offices, and on this x-ray here, the space between the top part of his joint and the bottom part of his joint, that space was only 2.8 millimeters, which means that was a bone-on-bone joint. So Dr. Picard's nurse practitioner came in and did an injection on this side of his knee. And remember, these stem cells, they're like honing missiles, right? They're going to go to the site of the injury and start repairing that cartilage and knocking the inflammation down. So 4 weeks after his injection, that space had gone from 2.8 to 5.3 millimeters, meaning that space is growing. And then 4 weeks after that, we did it again, and at 6.1 millimeters, that space is almost double in an 8-week time frame. The reason for that is because these cells replicate every 28 hours. That means that they double every 28 hours. You start over here with 1 cc. This is 1.1 million cells. The next day is 2.2 million cells, then 4.4, and it keeps growing like that. Every 28 hours, it's going to double, which means within 8 weeks, he had exponential number of cells growing, helping him create new cartilage. So not only does this knee hurt less than this knee, but this knee is much, much more mobile, which is an awesome thing for someone who wants to stay active, wants to keep those joints moving. So we're very happy about that. We're seeing very similar things here. So stem cell secret number 2, and you're probably thinking, well, what if I don't have arthritis? What if I have some condition like, say, XYZ? Well, I get comments, I get questions on a day-to-day basis about, I don't have osteoarthritis, I've got some other form of autoimmune disease. Hey, right now there's about 6,000 studies going on around the country. Hey, and those studies are focusing on just about everything. Hey, so when I get these questions like, I don't have arthritis, but I've got condition XYZ, my first question is usually number 1, if you look at what stem cells do, they're anti-inflammatory. Does your condition have inflammation? Yes or no? And the answer is typically yes. Number 2, is there an immune system component? The answer is typically yes. And number 3, is there tissue that needs to be regenerated? The answer is typically yes. Going back to Anna, it's exactly what happened with her. So we did some IV therapy with her. She responded really well. Okay, this is George. George had psoriasis. That's why his knees are glowing red. That is George's immune system attacking the cells, attacking his skin. 14 weeks after his injection, this is what his skin starts to look like. Excuse me, I said injection, I meant IV. So when people come into me and they ask me about condition XYZ, what I will typically say is, I wish that this was an osteoarthritic case because they're much more straightforward and our chances of helping are much higher, but it's not. We have to do the injection and hope for what's best. And I tell people all the time, if you can afford to take the risk, then do it, because it might be the best money you've ever spent. But if you can't afford it, then I discourage you from doing it. Anyway, George here was happy with his results, and had been thrilled with ours. We've had other stories that I'm not going to take the time to share, but the results have been phenomenal. So stem cell therapy, yes. Secret number 2, it does help for even for bone-on-bone osteoarthritic cases, but there's also a lot of systemic stuff that it can help with as well. So I'm just showing you some examples. So secret number 3, you don't have to be rich and famous to afford regenerative medicine. Before we talk about, and I know you're thinking, this is all great and fine, but how much does it cost? I know you want me to get to the bottom line, but before we do that, here's what I want to mention. Number 1, the average cost of joint replacement in this country is $57,000. Now, your portion will depend on your coverage, and what we find is that most people can do regenerative medicine on a joint for less than what their actual deductible is. I mentioned before that insurance does not cover stem cell therapy or regenerative medicine, but what typically people find is that doing it is actually cheaper than their deductible. With Medicare, there's not as many fees with Medicare when it comes to joint replacement. That's a different story. But again, Medicare insurances don't cover regenerative medicine. But what's not accounted for is the time that you have to miss work. Hey, we've told stories. In fact, I'm going to share with you a story later. I'll share this on my Facebook page about a gentleman that came to us that he was 63, so he was 2 years away from Medicare, and his plan was to just wait it out and get it as soon as, because he's self-employed, he doesn't have insurance, so he was just going to wait out those 2 years and get his knees replaced. Well, he came to us and said, I can't, I've got to be able to work. We had him back to work within a week. And he's sending me pictures now of the jobs that he's done, and it's awesome to see. But when you do a joint replacement surgery, you're out 6 to 8 weeks. It also doesn't account for time or the expense of rehabilitation as well. So you can see, even with insurance coverage, with Medicare, et cetera, costs that aren't accounted for can add up that you're going to miss entirely by doing regenerative medicine. It also does not account for the complications and side effects. You're going to continue to have to take medication. There may be complications from the surgery. We see this, we hear these stories, and I understand that most people that are on this webinar, they're actually here because they want to avoid this altogether, and I'm kind of preaching to the choir, but you have to consider those costs before we talk about real costs here. Now, real costs, it starts at $750. That's for PRP. Now, I haven't discussed PRP much. It's just kind of under the regenerative medicine umbrella, but PRP is we take your own blood and we spin your blood down, and then we take the plasma off of the top of that blood and we re-inject it back into your joint. And by doing that, what we're doing is we're providing cytokines and growth factors to help stimulate your own stem cell production and to help stimulate cartilage growth to help you get out of pain. PRP is a fantastic option. I would, if you're in the 40s, if you're in your 40s, we will talk about using PRP as a standalone. But you get much older, in about 45, you don't want to do PRP just by itself because the effects won't last as long. So PRP is an option. Stem cell therapy is done in cc increments. For example, 1 cc costs $42.50, 2 cc's cost $67.50. If you're going to do one joint, so if you're thinking your knee, then it's one joint. So one joint's doing $42.50. If you're going to do 2 joints, it's $67.50. So it goes up $2,500 per joint. But this is what I want you to consider. There are people who will do one joint now and then do one joint later and wait. Excuse me, I said that wrong. There are people who do one joint now and they'll wait till later to do the second joint to make sure it's going to work. That's fine. If that's what you want to do, we're happy to do that for you. The discount won't be as much as it is here because we do get breaks on 2 cc vials. But it is an option for you. Now, we talked about stem cell or IV therapy. We do IV therapy through stem cell exosomes. So we take those same, those same umbilical cord stem cells and we isolate the chemical messengers that they release called exosomes, and we can use those exosomes via IV to help with these same types of problems. So if we're going to do a 4 cc systemic application, so just an IV, IVs are $48.50. If you do an application with a joint injection, then it's $27.50. Let me explain this. During the consult, if you tell me your number one goal is your right knee, we are more than happy to inject your right knee. If you're over the age of 50, I will suggest doing an IV on top of that to help with systemic inflammation if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, we understand, but I just want you to know that it is an option that is available to you. Okay? Payment options include cash, check, or credit card. If you have your health savings account, if you have a flex spending account, you can use those. We do have some pretty flexible financing options that are available. If we need to make monthly payments, those are there as well. So let's recap secret number 3, that you don't have to be rich and famous to afford regenerative medicine. There's a couple of points I want to make. If you can't afford the financing, then don't do it. We don't want you to be stressed, because financial stress decreases any stress decreases our chances of this working for you. Most of our people will use credit cards or checks. Most of the people that we see are actually working class folks. But the point is, I just want to talk and see if this is a good fit for you or not. Okay? Now, we've been at this some time, and I know some of you are really excited to move forward with this. I know some of you, or most of you, are probably feeling like this guy here, because what I've done is I've just dumped a tremendous amount of information on you in a short amount of time. It looks like we've been at it for about 40 minutes. Please understand that I'm doing the best I can to condense all this information, and it is going to feel a little bit like this guy here. So if it's all right with you, what I want to do is I want to move to the next section of this, where we actually talk about the offer that we've put together for you. So for those of you that are ready to move forward, I want to go over this offer for you. So the next step then is to actually schedule the consultation. Okay, the button for this particular video is right below on the page. There's the big blue button there that says schedule your appointment. This will get you a one-on-one consultation with me, whether that's here in the office or over the phone. Either one is fine with me. We typically would charge $125 to do this. We're doing it at no cost to you. So that's $125 value there. The second thing we're going to do, excuse me, I ahead of myself. During that consultation, we're going to discuss your areas of degeneration. We're going to talk about the strategies that we're going to use. Are we going to do IV in the muscle? What are we going to do? We're going to talk about your cost options, what they look like. We're going to answer all of your questions. Very important to have your spouse involved as you're making these decisions. But the second thing we're going to do is we're going to give you a free copy of our printed health handbook. Okay, to me, this is much more than a $59 value. This is much more valuable than this. The printed health handbook. This is the diet protocol that I worked on while we were practicing functional medicine. Anybody that would come in, we would put them on this diet protocol to help clean up their gut. They would lose weight, they'd drop their blood pressure, their blood flow would improve. We use this for neuropathy, we use it for diabetes, we've used it for a host of other things. This is menus, it's recipes, it's shopping lists. I'm giving this to you on injection day because I want to give your cells the best chance they have at regenerating themselves. And we want to make sure we fuel those with whole food, not with Fritos and with Coke. So I'm going to give you a copy of this on your injection day. As I said, it's a $59 value, but I think it's worth much, much more than that. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to give you $450 off your first injection. Okay, so whatever it is you do, we're going to give you $450 off of that. So that's worth $450. We're going to give you free PRP injections with your stem cells. What we have found is by combining PRP, stem cells, and something called PEMF, which I haven't even gotten into, we're getting results within days rather than weeks. So we're going to do that for you. That's a $750 value. To me, again, that's worth a heck of a lot more than that. Lastly, if you decide to do an IV, it's going to save you another 20%. So there's another $550 value. All told, comes to a total of about $2,000. So this is why for those of you who are ready to move forward, I'm highly encouraging you to click on the button. Let's sit down and talk. Let's see what your best options are. And let's talk about what works best for you and for your family. For now, I'm going to say thank you. You guys have been awesome. Appreciate your patience. I know this is a recorded video from me messing up last night, but we'll get this in your hands as soon as we can. Thank you, and we will talk to you very soon.